So in just a single chapter, Oda has flipped the script and made Eam finally appear as the real endgame villain of the story, something many argued wasn't actually possible. Like almost everybody had Blackbeard as the final villain, which many including myself still kinda do, but with chapter 1125, many are beginning to claim that Eam and whatever power they used on Saturn is truly endgame material. And now with the addition of evil Shanks, aka Garling, to the gorosei, the world government is potentially the strongest it's ever been. Which means what Oda's been claiming for the last year and a half is finally coming true. We are approaching that final saga, which means things are about to change forever. Hell, we might even get to see the impossible happen. Dragon might actually do something. Could you even imagine that? That would truly be a game-changing moment. But now with the addition of Garling to the ranks of the gorosei, many are wondering who he'll face when the time finally comes. Like sure, him versus Sora would be incredible to see and I would personally love it. But honestly at this point Sora is almost destined to fight Venus Juro, especially with them having already met back on Egghead. So Sora couldn't possibly be the one to fight them both. So who else could do it? Well, before we fill you in on who we think Garling is destined to fight in the end, we first have to explain just how strong Garling actually is. For you see, Saint Figurland Garling in his prime was incredibly powerful. One of the most powerful fighters on God Valley, a place that had the likes of Gold Roger, Prime Whitebeard and Prime Garb. Like sure, just like most of One Piece's all-time greats, time has taken its toll and he is currently ranked weaker than many in the series. Like as it stands, Shanks, Blackbeard, Mihawk and potentially even Luffy would slap him up in a fight. But all this will soon change. Garling will potentially become the second strongest character in One Piece, with Eam of course being the strongest. 3C, since Garling has now been promoted to the gorosei position, his appearance may look the same, but he has likely gained whatever ability has been given to the other gorosei to keep them eternally young and powerful. Firstly, the immortality that Eam gives to them appears to also remove any fatigue and weakness that they may suffer over old age. We know this because while fighting on Egghead, despite everything Gear 5 Luffy did to them, nothing seemed to slow them down or harm them in any way. Which is something that can't be said for the other old characters in the series. Garp admitted to having less strength in his punch due to old age. Rayleigh admitted he'd lose against Blackbeard in his current state, and Whitebeard was practically a dead man walking when he met with Shanks. Like as it stands, old age is the biggest bitch of them all and has been causing the downfall of all of these One Piece greats for as far back as anyone can remember. So what's truly terrifying about the gorosei and Garling joining them is that we are essentially going to get a version of Shanks with all the old age wisdom of an old man, but the body of somebody in their prime. And you see, this also answers a question that many of us had for a while, and that is why Eam seems to prefer old men on his crew rather than those in their prime. Like the biggest thing that's been holding the gorosei back for a while in many people's eyes has been their age. Many in the community just don't rate the old guys. And with the stuff that I mentioned earlier, you could argue that neither does Oda. Like he's been weakening and killing them off this entire time. But now after Egghead, it appears that the real reason Eam hires the old men from the God's Knights is because it simply doesn't matter to him. You could be old as shit with one foot in the grave or a young man in his prime. It just doesn't matter. Because once Eam grants you the gorosei position, you revert back to your prime in everything except appearance. So what this all means is Garling is now back in his prime being how strong he was on God Valley, where he was named the heavy favourite to win that entire competition. Meaning at that time he was likely the strongest of all the God's Knights, who are currently comparable in strength to the Revolutionary Army. And of course we can't ignore the fact that he is definitely a family member of Shanks, likely his dad. Which means following what we've already seen so far with inherited strength between fathers and their sons, it stands to reason that whatever Shanks can do, Garling can too. Which means Garling is likely an advanced Conqueror's hockey user, just like his son Shanks. Now this isn't me saying that just because he's his dad that he is stronger than him by any means. It's more of just a way for me to explain that Garling may potentially be Shanks' equal, and why Shanks is definitely one of the biggest contenders for who may actually face Garling in the end. Because if you remember, Shanks and Whitebeard were also the first to ever mention Garling in the story. I'm of course referring back to when they met to talk about Blackbeard, and Whitebeard mentioned that just the sight of Shanks' face reminds him of quote unquote that guy, who for a time many were believing was Roger, but now more recently believe it to be Garling on God Valley. And Garling being the one to give Whitebeard his scar supports the argument that Garling during God Valley was likely stronger than Roger, because Roger and Whitebeard's fights have always been stated to be even, with neither of them ever really taking the upper hand. So what this means is Prime Garling is likely comparable to Prime Whitebeard and Roger, if not just a bit stronger than them at that time. I say at that time because I argue that now after becoming a gorosei and gaining the demonic Soin ability from Eam, he is currently stronger than them. Because think about it, this is essentially a Shanks with regenerative abilities and a demonic Soin devil fruit at his disposal, making him arguably even stronger than that of current Shanks. So whoever is destined to fight him will also have to be stronger than the former Pirate King and the former strongest man in the world. Which honestly does help us limit the possibilities quite a bit, because as of right now, outside of the Marines, there's only like 3, maybe 4 people that actually fit this description, with the first being Garling's own son, Shanks. who in my opinion is the least likely option, because while I do believe we'll see them interact with one another at some point in the series, I do also doubt that that will be in combat. Hell, it might only actually be in a flashback of some kind. Because ultimately, in my opinion, Shanks is on a path that leads towards Blackbeard, not one that leads towards Garling or E. Sure, Oda could extend the series once again and Shanks could go against Garling, but I don't think that will happen. I think he will push Shanks towards Blackbeard and Garling towards one of these other options. This is also the same reason why our second option, Blackbeard, is also very unlikely to happen, because again, he'd be far too busy taking out Shanks. Likely somewhere on Elbaf, where Luffy could potentially witness Shanks' demise for himself, leading to potentially a parallel between Elbaf and Marineford. So yeah, with Yonko's, Shanks, and Blackbeard unavailable to fight Garling, that leaves us with two potential possibilities, and honestly, I'm more confident in the first one than I am in the second one. The first and the most likely option in my opinion has to be Mihawk. You see, Garling being a swordsman with incredible power makes him akin to someone of Shanks' level. And as we know, Mihawk is a rival of Shanks', or at least he was back when Shanks was at his peak strength. Meaning, and I hate to make this argument, Mihawk is currently, as it stands, stronger than Shanks. Because of course, Shanks lost his arm saving Luffy to that overgrown fish. So it is my belief that going forward, Garling, aka Evil Shanks, will become the second strongest character in the series, and eventually will be used to hype up Mihawk leading into his fight versus Zoro. Because as we know, Zoro is normally used to defeat the second strongest enemy in an arc, and after Mihawk defeats Garling, he will undoubtedly become the second strongest enemy in the world. Meaning if we're assuming Luffy will defeat Im one day in the future, then we have to assume Zoro will defeat the second strongest character of the world, which as I just said will likely be Mihawk. But now let's move on to our second possibility, which is far less likely in my opinion, but one that I would just love to see happen. It's Dragon and his Revolutionary Army. Now I like this option because it offers a matchup between the Gods Knights and the Revolutionary Army, while also giving us a highly anticipated first move from Dragon. Sure, this possibility is a loose one for the simple fact that Dragon doesn't actually do anything in the world of One Piece, but it would also be a great way for Oda to finally showcase the strength of Dragon. Because think about it, he builds Garling up to be this unbeatable force, only for Dragon to roll up and take him out in a single Dragon Claw. Sure, this is highly unlikely, but how cool would it actually be? Because I've had a feeling for a while that Oda doesn't use Dragon to do anything because he fears that no matter what he does with him, it won't be satisfying enough for us, the audience. Like, we've built Dragon up in our minds to be this monster of a character, and if he doesn't come out in a big way, well then what was that 20-year-long build-up even for? So yeah, I have Dragon as the second big possibility. But I do kind of lean more in favor of Mihawk being the one to take him out for the simple reason that we need something big out of Mihawk before he fights Zoro. But now you tell me, who do you think will take on and potentially defeat Saint Figurland Garling? Will it be Dragon, Mihawk, or someone I didn't mention at all? Tell me down below in the comments. But now with that, I'm out. Have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and peace.